Good Thursday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about. That's where we begin. Some Deshaun Watson news. So one of the things that I've said a number of times on the show is, the allegations, you hear 66 from the New York Times, 24 lawsuits against him, 12 that the NFL talked to, 5 to 4 that were presented to Judge Sue L. Robinson. She reportedly threw one out. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk talked about the NFL's case and how it got down to those 4.
How did we get down to 12? It's entirely possible. And the NFL's not going to take out a billboard to tell this to the world because they don't want to expose the biggest flaw in their effort to engage in this rough justice that they try to craft as a PR tool. It could be that 12 of them said we're not cooperating. And it could be that 8 of the 12 that did talk to the NFL said we're not showing up for the hearing. We don't like the questions asked us. Remember, there was a report, and it wasn't a report, it was quotes from Tony Busby a year or so ago, complaining about, on behalf of the women who were interviewed, the way that they were treated, the questions they were asked. They didn't think they were sufficiently respected. So you just tap out. I'll get my justice in court. I'm not engaging in your kangaroo court. I'm not required to. You can't make me. It doesn't affect my rights. So that's the problem here. So look, the appearance that I think it creates is the NFL ultimately believed that there were only 4 valid cases. It's entirely possible that the NFL wanted to put all 24 in front of Judge Robinson, but 20 of them said, go to hell. We're not doing it. And if they say that, there's nothing the NFL can do to make them. Again, that is the biggest problem.
And again, it's a valid point, but again, it does make it look like with only 4 of them that it's not a great case. So Florio, again, on some of the challenges for Watson relative to an appeal process, where and when that initial decision from Sue L. Robinson might be coming.
As I read the personal conduct policy, he can do whatever he wants by way of changing the penalty. He can't have another hearing. He can't bring in new evidence. He's stuck with whatever findings of fact she makes. But he can say, and I see nothing in there that prevents this. Judge Robinson, you said 4 games. We think it should be far more significant than that. We think it should be a full season. We think it should be whatever we want it to be. I see nothing in the policy that keeps the commissioner or his designee, which is basically someone who will do whatever the commissioner wants as a practical matter. Nothing that limits them from saying 4, nah, 17. 2, nah, 12. 6, nah, 60. There's nothing in there that keeps them from doing whatever they want, with or without the prospect of the potential litigation that supposedly will be filed if it's a year or longer, because again, these are negotiated dispute resolution procedures. The union agreed to this. They made a big deal about having an external person involved. That's fine, but when you read the policy, the external person should have been after Goodell, not before. Goodell still has final say. He still does what he wants to do. And we'll see. We'll see how that goes, if that goes. For now, we wait for Judge Robinson's decision. I'm going to throw a dart and say that we're going to have it Friday afternoon, sometime on Friday afternoon. If not, then maybe on Monday.
Again, Mike Florio, and a very valid point that ultimately, this bargained process, it's Goodell who has the appeal. As long as there's some discipline that comes down, it's Goodell that says how long it is. All right, we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and this one about a potential Deshaun Watson appeal.
Dave, this is Cassius, the self-proclaimed quintessential Cleveland Browns fan. I'm calling on something about Deshaun Watson and what his punishment might be. A lot of people are saying that if Deshaun Watson gets a certain amount of games and then he appeal it, just say he gets 4 games or 6 and he appeal it, that the commissioner might then give him 8 games or 10, so he's not going to appeal any type of punishment that's 8 games or below. But the whole point of being able to appeal your punishment, you're appealing it and saying it's too much, it's too harsh. So it's just like if you're in court and you get sentenced to something and then you appeal your sentence, they're not going to give you more time because you appealed it. You're either going to get less or you're going to be left with what your original sentence was. So there's no harm in Deshaun Watson appealing the decision when it comes down, even if it's 6 games or 4. He don't have to accept that. What do you think about that? Because if he appeals, they can't then add more time to him. There's no risk to Deshaun for appealing it because the commissioner is going to get a chance to add more time to it if he wants anyway, as long as the judge gives him any type of punishment. So just clarify that for your listeners. Thanks. You know I love the show and everything that you're doing. Go, Cleveland Browns.
All right, Cassius, always appreciate the voicemails. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier. So, Quincy, relative to the potential appeal, Roger Goodell and the NFL has said pretty steadfastly they want a year, indefinite with at least a year. That's why if it's less than that, an appeal is on deaf ears, I think. The appeal, if it's a year, would be to the courts, and that's even an uphill battle as well.
Yeah, do you really want to add more like legal litigation? And if you're Deshaun Watson like that, if it's not necessary, right? If it's 4 to 6 games, yeah, you could appeal, but then you wouldn't be appealing to the NFL, right? Because the NFL, they've already made up their mind on what they feel like should be deemed out based on the Stu Robinson thing. You don't want to, give them another opportunity to change their mind based on how this thing sways in the public opinion. Also, you don't want to go to court with this whole thing unless you have to, because you're already dealing with an extraordinary amount of legal stuff if you're Watson's camp. So I don't think he will appeal if it was 4 to 6 games. And on the whole thing that Mike Florio was talking about, one of the things is interesting. Yes, Goodell does have final say, but this has more to do about the entire CBA than it just has to do about this one situation. Could Goodell go in there, overrule everything, and give Deshaun Watson whatever suspension he can? Theoretically, yes, it's true. Is that going to be his best play or a play that he sees as a valid one? That's more up the question, right? Because if he does that, he completely throws away all the leverage that he built up, giving the players union this outside arbitrator in the last collective bargaining agreement, which means when there comes a new negotiation, like, things are going to be even more difficult for the league on that front. People have to remember they have to renew these CBAs every 4 or 5 years. So that's always on the mind of the commissioner. Also, another thing to keep in mind is, does Roger Goodell and the NFL want this thing dragging out in court? Because Watson's camps are already threatened to take this thing out to court if this is a unsatisfactory suspension, which is a year plus, right? So that also factors in this. And also there's the other part of the reason the NFL agreed to this, bringing in a third party, is because they also don't want to have unilateral control over these suspensions, because it becomes something that they become responsible for. They'd much rather put their hands up in a situation and say, hey, this is what we pressed for, but this is what a federal judge deemed was necessary. We are not a dictatorship here. This is what we will roll with, right? Like, that gives them a certain amount of leeway when it comes to advertisers for, the television contract and everything else. And it gives them that kind of, hey, we tried, but we're going to let this be a process here kind of deal. There's a reason a lot of companies separate themselves from the direct punishment and they go to arbitration to protect themselves from situations like this.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so look at it this way. Does Roger Goodell want to piss off the players union, or is he going to take a hit from the public relations, from the people that wanted a large suspension PR-wise? And he can, again, just say, look, we put our best case forward, and it was the judge. It was an independent former federal judge who decided the suspension. So there's some plausible deniability. It'll be really interesting to see what happens if it comes out with a lesser sentence. All right, let's take a look at this. Mary Kay Cabot talking about some arms that are in camp now. A.J. McCarron and Josh Rosen worked out for the Browns today. Now, it's important to note, I didn't realize McCarron was a backup for Deshaun Watson for 2 seasons with the Texans. Also, Mary Kay saying Cam Newton not on the Browns' radar as far as that backup, assuming they're looking for a backup potentially for Jacoby Brissett if Watson gets suspended for, half of the season or something like that. Are those guys camp arms, you think, Rosen and McCarron, or is that legitimately who you're rolling with as a backup to Brissett if Watson gets 4, 6, 8 games?
It could be one of two things. I think the most it could be is probably a camp arm, right? Like maybe they bring in somebody to be a camp arm, see if they like them more than what they can get out of Josh Dobbs in the early part of the season whenever the Watson suspension is. Also, it could just be hey, let's see what's up with A.J. McCarron. Let's see how Josh Rosen is doing. If it comes up during the year, if we need another quarterback, hey, we did this research on A.J. McCarron in the summertime to know, hey, we can either, which one do we like more, which one had a better workout. This might just be the Browns just, keeping an eye out just in case, if they have to go through a third quarterback, right? Or if they have to go to Josh Dobbs, they can find somebody relative short notice that they feel like comfortable bringing in. I don't know what the practice squad rules are anymore. I know eligibility is much different than what it was in years past. Might also be a move there, right? When they release the final 53, if they see one of these guys, maybe they're available, they could put them on the practice squad and kind of have them in the same role that they had the fourth string guy last year. I forget his name.
Nick Mullins.
It was like Blaine Gabbard's backup.
Yeah, Nick Mullins.
Nick Mullins. Yeah, there's a similar situation there where they didn't really bring him in for camp. They had the younger guy in there last year, but then once it came around, they needed somebody for a game. They brought in Nick Mullins because they were familiar with him because they worked him out. That's all this really is. If they need a guy in a hunch, we're gonna do some research, see who's out there, see how we like them, how they're looking currently. So that if in the case happens, we have better information on that. And I think that's really all it is. It's amazing to see this became like a big story. I don't know. The thirst to not have Jacoby Brissett be a starter if Deshaun Watson is suspended. It's one of the weirder fascinations I've seen with the Browns in the storyline ever, because it's like every time another quarterback gets brought up, people jump to, is this the Jacoby? Nah, man. I don't think this is what y'all want it to be. I don't understand it, but I don't know. It's been a weird thing to watch.
Quincy, Carrier, and I going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll flip sides of the ball, talk a little bit of defense. How good is the Browns secondary? Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Quincy has his own show, so Google it on YouTube. Quincy, I know you've dealt with this topic, so how good is the Browns secondary? What do you think?
It's a really good and really deep unit when you look at what they have out there. I mean, Greedy Williams is really solid, and he's probably going to be the fourth or fifth guy that the Browns have, considering, maybe Martin Emerson gets some playing time this year. But you look at Denzel, you look at Greg Newsome, A.J. Green III's another guy to look out for. That was really solid in the rotation, and you just see a bevy of defensive backs that are good. Like that's what Joe Woods needed. Remember when he really struggled defensively in 2020? It's because they just didn't have the depth there at defensive back, and that's when this defense was at its worst under the Joe Woods era. And it's interesting because now we're at like 3 years. It's a legitimate era of Joe Woods here. But we've seen, as the defensive back room has gotten deeper and more talented last year, what a difference that made for the defense down the year. And that's only going to be amplified by them adding more players. The secondary is where this defense is built. This is a defense built from the top to the bottom. They have Myles Garrett, so they don't really stress that much about the defensive line, but they really have put a lot of effort into getting a lot of DBs. And I think they have a ton of really, really solid defensive backs on this roster. And that's not even factoring what they have at the safety position, which I think is pretty good too.
Yeah, and Andrew Berry said you can't have enough defensive backs in a passing league, and he's trying to live by that word. Top 50 players in the NFL right now, Pro Football Focus ranking them. They reveal some of them today. So Myles Garrett checks in at number 12 past 2 seasons. Best pass rush win rate, 22.6% among edge rushers, just ahead of TJ Watt. Also leads the league in pass rush wins. And then at number 18, Joel Bitonio, kind of almost a forgotten guy by a lot of people. Excellent player his entire NFL career, took things to an entirely different level last year. 93.6 overall PFF grade, allowing just 17 pressures in 17 games. Keep in mind, he kicked out to tackle when they needed him as well for a game or two last year. Those guys are certainly deserving of being, they're both top 20, top 18.
Yeah, they're both really good players. And the Browns have a lot of really good players there. I mean, the Myles Garrett versus TJ Watt debate is going to go on till the end of time. It's going to be the same debate forever, right? Given that Myles Garrett has been able to achieve what he has at the pass rush at the edge rusher position, and he's only really been in a blitz-heavy defensive scheme once in his career. It was with Greg Williams telling him he could only play with one pass rush move. Other than that, he's been in these real, zone-heavy, we're going to smother the back end to free up the front end kind of defenses, which is the opposite of what TJ Watt plays and why TJ's production is always going to be a little bit higher than Myles. But Myles is doing this in a situation where they're really only rushing 4, and he has he doesn't have as much help too, because when they rush the line, it's only 4 Pittsburgh. They have a 5-man front because they run a 3-4. And then also you have to consider Myles gets double teamed significantly more often because they're not blitzing, because they're sending less people, and he still has the numbers that he has. Myles Garrett's just a fantastic player. I mean, I don't know where he would rank in the Browns franchise. Even if we're going, obviously if we're going from 99, he's probably up there at number 1 or number 2 next to Joe Thomas, wherever you want to put him. But if we're going back, to the original start of this franchise, I mean, he ranks highly up there. He's a tremendous player. And Joe Bitonio, not that far behind. I mean, he's kind of like the successor to Joe Thomas in a way of being the guy on the offensive line who's just been consistent for however long he's been here. I mean, 2014, he was drafted in the Johnny Manziel era. He's been a really good guard since day one, and nothing's really changed with that. I mean, the consistency there, he deserves his flowers that he's getting right now.
Absolutely. And I know this is another topic that you've addressed on your show. Do they have enough pass rushers? Do the Browns have enough pass rushers?
Yeah, so I was looking at this, and what I've been doing is reviewing all of the position groups before we get into training camp, and probably once we get into training camp just a little, because they don't put the pads on for a while. But it's one of those interesting questions, right? Do the Browns have enough of the edge rush position? You have to remember, again, I said they're built from the top end down, right? So they really loaded this team with a lot of DBs, which means they're going to sacrifice a little bit of depth at edge. And they also have a weird rotation with edge rusher where they have that one special spot for a guy like a Tack has that Achilles. He's not going to play this year, so it's going to be Chase Winovich. And then they also have guys that they want to rotate in and out, go from more traditional four spots to 4-eye and play a little bit closer to a 3-tech spot. And those are guys like Alex Wright and others. So I think they have a nice rotation of pass rushers. My ultimate point is when you have Myles Garrett and you have a guy like Jadeveon to the opposite of him, I think you have enough to get away with experimenting a little bit more in that room. And I think that's what the Browns have right now is they have the ultimate ace of aces in there. I mean, like the argument is he better than Aaron Donald or TJ Watt, which tells you the quality of player we're talking about, tends to elevate the position group no matter who you put around them.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We'll turn our attention to the linebacking core. We'll also talk a little bit about where Deshaun Watson's contract ranks. Another quarterback got a big deal. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Quincy has his own show, YouTube. Go ahead and search it. Quincy, we've talked a little bit about the defense last segment. Are the Browns linebackers good enough? What do you expect them to do at that position as well?
Yeah, this is a really young, solid group. I think this is what they wish they would have had kind of get developed in their interior to their defensive line, where they just have a bunch of young guys who are ready for roles, and then you can just plug in one veteran to kind of hold things down. Because you look at that linebacking room, you got JOK, who you feel really good about. And then you have Anthony Walker, who you know is going to be consistent. And then you have Jacob Phillips and Sione Takitaki, who you feel like you can rotate in and out. And that's pretty much all you're going to need from your linebackers. I think they're really only going to go 4 deep. Maybe they have Willie Harvey come in like sometimes if they need somebody to get a blow desperately. But they don't really use a ton of linebackers in this defense. So I think that will be fine. And I like what you can get out of all 4 of those linebackers, right? Sione Takitaki's a really good run fit guy, able to stop the run, able to be more physical. If you go into your base, you're probably going to have him out there. Jacob Phillips is a bigger body. He's decent in coverage, athletic enough, and he's used to kind of playing with a similar player to JOK. Look at his LSU tape with the Patrick Queen. You know, it's a very similar role that they're asking him to play in, that they asked him to do in LSU, now in Cleveland. JOK, enough's been said about JOK. We know he's really good. And Anthony Walker is just really consistent, solid guy. Was actually solid, really solid in what the Browns asked him to do in coverage. Doesn't mean he's like a Darius Leonard or anything when it comes to coverage. The Browns didn't ask him to like hold seam routes or anything like that. But they did ask him to do some small stuff, and it kind of proved that, hey, you can have Anthony Walker down there all 3 downs. He's not going to be a liability in coverage. So I think they have built that room fine. It's not like a flashy one. There's no all-pro. There's no Denzel Ward or Myles Garrett in that position group, but there is a JOK. And I think that's going to end up being a really solid group for this and a really young, cheap group for this team.
Again, from your show, what do you think the Deshaun Watson era looks like? What do the Browns look like with Watson as their quarterback?
Yeah, if Watson is what he has been before the trade, I mean, you're looking at a perennial playoff contending team. I mean, it's going to be similar to, around what the Steelers were able to do in the Triple B era, where they had, Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. They had a chance to win the Super Bowl every year that they suited up. And if Watson is who he was in the NFL, I mean, we're not projecting college to NFL at this point. We're projecting NFL to NFL. If he is who he was, then this is going to be a perennial championship contending team. It's going to depend if he can achieve those things. It's going to depend on how things break. We like to act like everything is all willpower when it comes to winning a championship. It is almost always luck to win a championship, right? Like, unless you have like the KD Warriors and you just overpower everybody with how much talent you have on a roster, winning a championship usually relies on a good amount of luck to get there and to win the game. I mean, like, look at the amount of luck it took the Cavs to finally win a championship, and that's really the reference point that we have in Cleveland. But you look at every championship, you're going to see some fortune be played at any role there. So that's going to be what it would take to win a championship, but you would know every year. I mean, this is going to be a 10 to 12 to 13 win team. Some years might be better than others. Some years might be better playoff runs than others. But you would know consistent playoffs, consistent championship contending is what this team would be looking at. I mean, it would be very similar to what we've seen from the other franchises that we have envied in Cleveland for quite a while, which is every year you're going to feel like you can win a championship. And that's going to be what the Watson era would entail. And that's why they made the trade. They wanted a guy they felt like that could be the reality when they ultimately didn't see Baker being the guy. Yeah,
you need a quarterback that you feel good with when he has the ball, and you need a touchdown in the fourth quarter. And that's something Watson has done. Speaking of quarterbacks, so Kyler Murray got a 5-year deal worth $230.5 million, makes him the second highest average paid player in NFL history. $46.1 million. Do you think that .1 was to get him ahead of Deshaun Watson? So Watson now the third. Now the guarantee in that is only $160 million. That is second to Watson's $230 million guaranteed. I want to take a look at it. Before we take a look at this, this is also kind of interesting. So, and we've talked about this. Kyler Murray, the 8-game suspension for Watson would cost him $460,000, leaving him just $45 and .54 earned in 2022. And again, that would be relative. If his contract wasn't extended by the Browns and guaranteed, it would have been $15.5 million. Now, the Browns want the extra year. That's why they extended it. They knew the guarantee was going to cost him. Andrew Berry, for salary cap purposes, has always gone low in the first year. So let's clear all that up. But it's very interesting. Murray's $46.1 million. I'm guessing that was so the agent could claim victory there.
I mean, you got to claim some kind of victory, and honestly, that's one heck of a victory for him. I've been real critical of Kyler Murray's agent, but he was able to get some kind of deal done. Now, the fact that 160 is like second, and then Deshaun Watson's up there at 230, guaranteed is a wild number. I didn't know the chasm was that deep. I don't know what it was before, but there's a big gap in guaranteed money that I think only Lamar Jackson could probably make up, or at least has the resume to make up in an open market. But yeah, Kyler's deal is an interesting one. It's not as much guaranteed money, but it is more money. But I think we all know that number on the top there is not the real number unless it's all guaranteed. It's really the 160 that's guaranteed. Everything else can be moved around. And even with Deshaun Watson's deal, don't expect that deal is going to be the cap. Well, don't expect that they're not going to rearrange that contract if they continue with Watson in like 2-3 years to where they figure out a way to kick some more cap down the line. I mean, the Steelers, everybody talks about the Browns doing this. The Steelers are really who everybody got the playbook from, because if you know with Ben, what they did up until the end of Ben's career was just kick the can down the road, have him sign an extension or a signing bonus, have all of that money disappear from the cap, and just roll it down. And they did this literally from when Ben signed his first big contract all the way until Ben retired, and the bill finally came due like his last year, and they just split it into 2 years. One's a void year, I think, this year, so they're still on the cap for it. And then that's it. That they did this for 10 years with Big Ben. So I would expect a similar playbook coming from the Browns when it comes to these big contracts, and coming from other teams who's really followed the lead in that, of being like, hey, we'll give you the money. We're going to negotiate this deal. I like to say in the NFL, we talk about 5-year deals all the time. No such thing as a 5-year deal. Everything's a 2- and 3-year deal until it's not, right? Like everything's going to be renegotiated eventually.
Yeah, and the other thing that people don't realize, Deshaun Watson is still young. Even though he's played in the league a couple of years, he's actually younger than Baker Mayfield. I mean, keep that in mind. This is still a young guy who has done it at the NFL level.
Got younger at quarterback. Even if he gets suspended for a year, they would still be younger at quarterback than Baker Mayfield would have been entering this year, which is interesting.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE. Talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the makeup of the Browns' 53-man roster.
Good afternoon. I was looking at the projected 53-man roster on the internet the other day, and I noticed that at least 60 to 65% of the players will have played for no one but the Browns, thanks to some excellent drafting from Andrew Berry. How does this compare with the rest of the league?
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, it's a really good question. Good teams, that's usually how it works, and the Browns are getting good at drafting and developing players. Teams that are perennially in the NFL usually have 65, even 75% of the players that they've drafted and developed.
Yeah, it's how you stay under the cap, too, is being able to develop and draft good players and have the confidence that you would rotate them out, That's what the Browns have been doing for the last 3 years here under Andrew Berry. And it's interesting, right? It's kind of like whenever we talk about the quarterback's position with Cleveland, how people nationally have been like at least 3 to 6 months behind. Like it's like we're doing mail in the Old West and takes like forever because they got to like horse and buggy it, the news out to the national media, out to New York. But it's kind of how it feels like. It's the same thing whenever we talk about Andrew Berry. Those who are closer to this thing and like really follow what the Browns have been doing understand that the Browns have been looked at much differently than what they are looked at publicly, right? When you go on Twitter and people talk about the Browns, people still think it's the Browns is a badly run organization. People closer to this situation don't tend to think that. They actually think the Browns have done a really, really good job turning things around, stabilizing this the roster, being a well-run franchise in general the last 3 years. I mean, if you look at the mistakes that they have made since 2018, they've done a good job since Depot has been here, John DePodesta, since he's gotten here. You can see that even when they make mistakes, they're really quick on just correcting those mistakes and not repeating them, right? You get the Freddie Kitchens hire. Let's just move on. It was obvious he wasn't the guy. Let's move on. John Dorsey wants to keep Freddie and continue with that. You just got to get rid of John at that point, right? And then they go to Andrew Berry. Things that sound dysfunctional at first, but when you actually look at it from the macro, aren't really dysfunctional. Same thing with the Baker Mayfield, right? People were blasting the Browns about being dysfunctional about the whole Baker Mayfield situation. But the fact was, it was either you're going to extend him and commit money to him, big money to him, or you were going to move on. Which one did you want to go? That was the situation the Browns were in. The fact that they found a way to somehow get an upgrade out of this whole situation and still get a draft pick for offloading Baker Mayfield, I think should be commended in some ways, like as far as a football perspective and a pure roster building perspective. So, I mean, you look at the issues that have been created in 2018 since the Browns have done a really good job in doing that. Also, really good job retaining their own talent. Like we have named all of these top flight guys that the Browns have. All of them have had at least another contract with the Cleveland Browns, right? Kareem Hunt got his second contract with the Cleveland Browns last year. Nick Chubb, Joe Bitonio, everybody that we mentioned has seen a second contract with the team. If this were happening in a different team with a different perception, people would understand what is going on here and not be as slow to catch up. But since this is happening in Cleveland, it's going to take the Browns like getting to the AFC Championship game for people to go, oh my goodness, what's going on in Cleveland? But it's been happening for quite a while. The restructuring and the whole organization, and that starts with DePodesta, and it continued on with who I think the perfect fit for DePodesta is Andrew Berry, and it's really accelerated since Andrew Berry has gotten here in 2020 with the addition of Kevin Stefanski. I think they all got all those three pieces lined up now to where they're going to be a pretty solidly ran organization for the time being.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know, again, you've addressed this on your show. Do you think Kevin Stefanski's on the hot seat? Should he be on the hot seat, coming up?
Well, if Watson plays the bulk of the season and you win 8 games, he's going to be on the hot seat, if not let go, just because the expectations are going to be high. You can only underwhelm expectations so many times. So when the expectations are as high as the Cleveland Browns expectations are, if they have Watson for a bulk of the year, you're always going to be on the hot seat when it comes to that until you have either won a Super Bowl that gives you some leeway, even if you massively underscore some expectations, or, until you really that, right? That's really the only thing that keeps you from the being fired because of the high expectations thing. Then until you've done that, every year you have extremely high expectations. There is an extremely high chance for you to end up on the hot seat if you do not reach them. There's a balancing act here, right? Just because the team is better doesn't mean the team security is any better. It's actually different. If the expectations would just go 8-8, which I think around the national media, that would be the expectation. Jacoby Brissett had to play the whole season. Nobody's getting fired, right? If the Browns go 8-8. But if Deshaun plays and he looks like Deshaun Watson, but the offense does something weird or something like that, then people are going to look at Kevin Stefanski and say he has to go because the expectations are too high to play around with. So, I don't think he is on the hot seat per se, but if the expectations are high, you're always on the hot seat unless you're Bill Belichick. And even then, let Bill Belichick have a high expectation team. Let people think that he has a Super Bowl champion and losing the first round 3 years in a row. People going to ask for Bill Belichick to get fired and say, hey, man, he don't got it no more, right? We have seen this. There are people want Greg Popovich fired in San Antonio. It does not matter what you have done before. If you consistently underwhelm the expectations in front of you, you can be gone.
Yeah, if you're Kevin Stefanski or any head coach and you have talent, you know that you're expected to do well. But you sign up. That's the type of pressure you sign up for. Give me high expectations, give me talent, and I'll figure it out. And I think that's pretty much.
It's why you want to coach. You know, if you want to coach at Ohio State, where the expectation is the national championship. Not a lot of people breaking their neck to coach at TCU. You know what I mean? Where, hey, you can keep that job at TCU forever, winning a bowl game, going to 8-4, and being okay, having a good graduation rate or whatever they want there. But there is a lack of what do you say, validation that comes with that job that you would want, right? And you want to know that you're the best of the best, which, hey, you can get fired, really. Let Nick Saban have a 4-loss season more than once in 10 years, and he would be gone. They would fire him. Like, that's just what expectations are. Your job's never safe with expectations being high. It just isn't.
All right, before I let you go, and I know you've addressed this one, and I can't wait to hear your answer to this. Should the Browns fear the chip on Baker Mayfield's shoulder in Week 1 when they play the Panthers?
I got a question. Did other teams fear the chip on Baker Mayfield's shoulder when he was on the Cleveland Browns? Honestly, right? He had all these. Remember the chip on his shoulder about Cliff Kingsbury and how he was just going to show the Arizona Cardinals that Cliff Kingsbury made this big mistake going with Davis Webb over him, and it was a whole big story. He played his worst football against the Arizona Cardinals, both games. It don't matter which one. One was the come get me game. The other one was the massacre that happened at First Energy Stadium this year. Like, the thing with Baker's chip on the shoulder, it is a fun thing to talk about. It is a media point, but it is not a tangible football thing. There is no evidence of this chip on his shoulder evolving his play. I would argue that sometimes you can see the chip on his shoulder affecting his play in a negative way, where he's trying to prove things and trying to force things. So, you know, I know it's going to be a fun thing. Oh, Baker, this chip on his shoulder, and Baker's personality definitely plays into it. But we have seen Baker for 4 years. And how many times did we see that, get excited about the chip on his shoulder and buy into all that hype just to see him not perform the way that we wanted him to perform in that chip on his shoulder game? I'm not going to give you the answer on that, Cleveland fans. Answer that question for yourself. How much did that chip on your shoulder do for you when he was your quarterback? And then ask yourself how realistic it is to believe that this is going to come back and bite us just because he's on a different team. He's still the same dude. He did not become different. He did not grow 3 inches. He did not become run a 4.4. He's still Baker Mayfield. So, man, this is a serious question I would ask people. What did that chip on his shoulder do to other teams when he was in Cleveland versus what you think is going to do to you in Cleveland? Because people are talking like he's going to play like Cam Newton in 2010 because he got a chip on his shoulder. And I would just be surprised if that would happen. You know, I would be surprised.
Quincy Carrier, as always, good stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
No problem. You have a great day, Dave.
All right, Quincy Carrier. Make sure you check out his show as well on YouTube. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Talk a little bit about Jimmy Garoppolo. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family
and educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity. A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Earlier in the show, we heard that A.J. McCarron, as well as Josh Rosen, working out for the Browns. Browns not interested in Cam Newton at this time. That was according to Mary Kay Cabot. Let's take a look at this one. Mary Kay also tweets out, Browns not expected to pursue Jimmy Garoppolo. He has been given formal permission to seek a trade. Browns, even with the uncertainty over Deshaun Watson, not expected to pursue that at this time. With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon, Dawg Pound Daily. Casey, it sounds like the Browns are getting ready to ride with Jacoby Brissett, barring a unforeseen lengthy suspension.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the plan all along for them is, kind of let Jacoby handle this. Now, you're going to see through their actions what they're wanting to do. They're going to bring in people like McCarron or Rosen, and who knows on the horizon who else they're going to bring in to see who they can bring in to be a camp arm and a serviceable backup in the event that Jacoby were to be hurt if he was, stepping in for Watson in like a short-term area. I think the equation all changes if we get some unfortunate news from Sue Robinson, and everything will need to be revisited at that time. But I don't think they were ever in play for a Cam Newton or a Jimmy Garoppolo to begin with.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And we'll talk a little bit about how much cap space they have. They have a lot of it. I think they intend to roll that over, and because you can roll that into next year, and then you can do some of the other things that you might need to do relative to extensions and bringing people in next season as well.
Yeah, maintaining cap flexibility is key for this team, especially with the young core of talent that they want to keep together over the long haul. So I expect the majority of that to be rolled over into next year.
All right, this from Dawg Pound Daily. 3 most important non-starters for the Browns in 2022. Number 3, one of those offensive tackles, one of the swing tackles, Chris Hubbard. Number 2, Chase Winovich. And number 1, Jacoby Brissett. So I've talked about it before, and I think it was with you even. I think an underrated injury last year was Chris Hubbard. When you had Wills banged up, Conklin going down, there were games where you're playing with your 4th and 5th tackles. That's rough for any NFL team to be doing.
Yeah, technically, I don't know if it was their 5th tackle. They're shooting guards out there. It was all hands on deck. But yeah, Hubbard's instrumental. He's got so much experience, left to right, anywhere he can play guard even. He's a super experienced guy and he can step in. And with Conklin's kind of uncertain health coming into this year, Hubbard is going to be very instrumental. And he's instrumental in Hudson's development. Hudson, he started to come along towards the end of last year and showed he could be serviceable. And I'm sure they want him to take a bigger role, in the long term. But not being forced into that role like he was last year could be huge for him in his development. So Hubbard being on the team, kind of being that bridge guy, I think that is huge for this team. When it comes to the Winovich, I think he's very underrated. What they need to do, the Browns on the defensive side of the ball, is limit Miles' snaps. You want to keep him in that 800 range. Last year, I think he was around 865. You want to keep him as fresh as possible. And having someone like Winovich, you can come in and give you a threat off the edge when Miles is on the sideline getting a little breather. That is completely, and that's invaluable. You really need somebody to provide a threat. And even though physically he has a different makeup than Takk McKinley, he's going to be supplanting that Takk McKinley role. The guy who's going to come in and just, be able to get after it on a limited number of snaps and be as productive as possible, just so the offense can't really let up just because 95 sitting on the sidelines.
And Brissett, that's pretty evident. They're going to be how many ever games Deshaun Watson is suspended for. It's going to be Jacoby Brissett's show.
Yeah, I mean, that goes without saying, like the quarterback position is paramount. And your backup quarterback, he can't be a weak link. He has to be someone that can step in and, hold it all together. Now, you don't need him to be a world beater, especially with the Browns roster. They're not going to ask him to go out there and put the games on his shoulder every week. But you need to have someone with experience. And what's key with Jacoby is his durability. He is a big man, and I think that's playing into this. And he's athletic enough to do a lot of the things that Deshaun was doing. He's not really going to attack the line of scrimmage running, but the stuff in the pocket, the rollouts, you know what I mean? Just being that physical presence back there and the experience, you want someone who's seen the bullets fly and kind of knows what to expect. So there's not a huge letdown when he comes in.
Yeah, and people will point to his record as a starter, and it's not great. But keep in mind, when he had the starting job in Indianapolis, that offense was designed for Andrew Luck. When he had the starting job for 4 games with Deflategate, that offense was designed for Tom Brady. Those are very different skill sets than what I would assume the Browns offense will be asking him to do.
Yeah, he's never been on a roster like this. He's never had an offensive line like this. Now, the Colts offensive line, when Jacoby was there, was good. This offensive line has the potential to be great. And the running game. I mean, you have 3 serviceable backs, one of which is absolutely elite. And Hunt, I mean, on any given Sunday, man, he could take a game over by himself. So it's not going to be all on Brissett when he's in there. But he's going to be tasked, honestly, just to keep it on the tracks and keep it moving and not lose games. And I think that he's more than, adequate in that event.
All right, training camp gets underway. Rookies will be reporting tomorrow, but training camp gets underway next week. What do we need to hear and see so that you feel good about the direction the Browns are headed in out of training camp?
Well, on the offensive side of the ball is kind of where all my concerns lie. The defense is really just kind of running it back. So, and they have the same coordinators. I mean, they should be able to hit the ground running, but that offense, it needs to develop timing. The offensive line has been working together for a while, so there shouldn't be a lot of moving parts there. But as far as I want to know what kind of packages they're running. I want to see the personnel. How often is Bell on the field? That's where you kind of get a taste for this, because a lot of the preseason games will be smoke screens type stuff. But you only get a limited amount of practice time. So what they're practicing on is stuff they think they're actually going to implement in games. So what kind of, how often are they in the pistol? Or how do they go 4 wide at all? Or are they just kind of strictly keep it 12 personnel and some occasional 13? That's going to be the stuff that I'm going to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they do 2-back sets, just because they did do that in Houston. And you could see that with mobile quarterbacks being, that's something you have to account for if you're a defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a fan base, the Browns have really pined to see Hunt and Chubb on the field at the same time. 2 deadly players, and they kind of have different skill sets, but that end goal is still the same. And just to keep the defense on their heels, keep them guessing. Like they're going to have to switch up personnel for sure if those 2 guys stay on the field, and they can use them in a variety of ways. So I would be interested to see how much 2-back sets they're using as well.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at how much cap space the Browns have left. It's the most in the NFL. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Cleveland Browns fan here. Been a Browns fan my entire life. I was born in 1998, and I was just wanting to shout you guys out. I've been watching you for the last couple of years, and yeah, you guys do great videos, and I appreciate all you guys making these great content. Thank you. Go Browns from Beattown, Vermillion, Ohio. Oof, go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails, and we want you to continue voicemailing us. We get a lot of content that way. If you want us to talk about something, voicemail us, and we will certainly do that. Casey, so camp opens coming up next week, and they have updated the amount of cap space available, and the Browns have twice as much cap space as the Cowboys, who are in second. You see $48.02 million, Cowboys at 21, and you see down the road, look at the Bengals with 15.03. They have a Joe Burrow contract looming, but we've talked about how important this is. Browns will want to roll that over, and then that takes care of the big number that's coming with Deshaun Watson in the second year of his deal and the like.
Yeah, I know fans see that number and they're automatically like, oh, we got to bring some more names in. You equate that money to, we could sign Sue or we could sign Julio Jones. But the reality of the situation is the Cleveland Browns have 8 large contracts that are just in the beginning stages, and they're really not crippling the team this year. But when you look at like Miles, Ward, Chubb, Teller, Batonio, Cooper, I mean, this year total, those 8 contracts will come to $52 million. Next year, it's $173 million. That $120 million difference, that 48 million is accounted for. They got plans for that. Now, the salary cap's going to stay on the upward trajectory. It's going to keep moving up, and that's going to adjust everything. And don't forget, there are definitely salary cap gymnastics they can do. They're going to be able to add void years or convert salary to signing bonus and stuff like that to kind of give them a little more wiggle room. But they have some serious contracts on the books that they're going to have to honor. So that $48 million, don't even think about it. That's for next year.
Yeah, and the flip side of it is you would rather have those contracts, those serious contracts. That means you've done your job drafting and developing guys, because those are second contracts usually. That was never a problem in the past. So those are problems that head coaches, general managers, and owners, they want to have. Those only happen with happens with good teams.
A great problem to have.
All right, let's take a look at this. Ranking all 32 offensive playmaking groups. So this is the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. Bengals are number 1. Raiders are number 2. 49ers are number 3. Browns at 23. And in 2021, they were ranked 4th. 2020, they were ranked 2nd. And the comment is just not so sure about the Browns receivers. Even if Cooper's back in his old self, Browns are going to have a trio of mid-round picks in starting roles: Donovan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, David Bell. That's a fair assessment of the wide receiving core, but you're not taking into account the running back core, and I get the production with David Njoku. I get why it's low. 23 might be a little bit lower than I think it should be, though.
Yeah, it's definitely the wide receivers that swung that to land them as low as they did. Because if just compare for a second. The Bengals, who were number 1 on that list, would you take their running back room of Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine, and Chris Evans over the Browns? No, you definitely wouldn't. I would even take their tight end room of Hayden Hurst and Drew Sample over Harrison Bryant and David Njoku. But the wide receivers are where it swung. You got, and understandably, this is a passing league, and that's kind of the first thing that gets looked at. But the way this offense is ran, it's not ran through the wide receivers like a lot of teams kind of run their that's the engine for the Bengals. Now, they might have to switch that up this year because they put a lot of good stuff on tape. Defensive coordinators are going to make adjustments. They're going to play different coverages. So they may have to rely on different, skill sets to kind of keep them afloat. Whereas the Browns, I'm going to tell you right now what they're going to do. They're going to give the ball to running backs 30 times a game. That's going to be the nucleus. Even with Deshaun at quarterback, you can't ignore the fact that running game is what it is. So yeah, the receivers, and those are completely justified things. Like if Cooper is to pull a hamstring and be out in a few weeks, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. There's going to be guys that need to step up, and until that happens, it's just an unknown quantity of like what's going to what receiver is going to be like the guy going forward. You know?
Yeah, and even the tight ends, I'm with you. I think Njoku's going to have a big year. I think Bryant could have a pretty decent year too. They haven't done it yet for a consistent amount of time in the NFL.
Yeah, you got to earn it. You got to put good stuff on tape, and until then, you know, they're not going to show them the respect. They got to go out there and earn it.
Casey Kinnamon, you always put good stuff on tape for us. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
And anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
All right, Casey Kinnamon, make sure you read him. Dog Pound Daily. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you right back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow on Sports for CLE.